yeah, we're discussing the Monaco Grand Prix, and because we haven't spoken about Formula E on the podcast yet, we're speaking about the Monaco E-Prix, right?
Yeah, because there were only sort of 2 weeks between the two of them, and it was the first time that Formula E was going to be tackling pretty much the full Formula 1 layout. The only difference was the Nouvelle chicane was slightly tweaked. And they were kind of polar opposites in terms of racing action. So we thought it would be interesting to talk about the different stages of the weekend and how Formula E and Formula 1 stacked up against each other. Not just in lap times and things, but in kind of overall excitement of the event.
Because full disclosure, I'd say we're both fans of Formula E, not as much as Formula 1, but we probably keep our eye in a little bit more than the average Formula 1 fan, I would say.
Yeah, I would agree with that. We don't have the whole, oh, I hate it, what's the point of fan boost, or they don't sound right. Like, we just like the racing, and the racing is good.
But so we're gonna look at the 3 different areas of a race weekend and compare the F1 Grand Prix with the E-Prix. And we're starting with qualifying.
Like, traditionally, qualifying at Monaco is always the most exciting part of the Formula 1 event, and this year was kind of no different. Q1 was kind of one of the most changeable Q1s I think I've seen in a while. It seemed like the fastest lap was flitting between so many different drivers. There were about 3, 4, 5 different drivers that were all setting the fastest lap. So it started with Carlos and Charles in the Ferraris, we had Lando in the McLaren doing really well, Max in the Red Bull, and this was all just in Q1. People were outperforming each other as it went through, which was great to see, and something that I don't think we would have expected going into Monaco. Like, would you have expected Ferrari and McLaren to also be setting the fastest laps?
No, not at all. I think Ferrari came out of nowhere. I would have been less surprised if McLaren were kind of pushing that front row. I think part of it as well comes from Mercedes underperforming. But yeah, kind of through the qualifying, because it's public roads and they get more rubbered in as every session goes on, you really see those session times come down throughout a session. And so a lot of it can be down to like timing and when you go out. If for instance Max was in front of Charles on his last run, then he could have very easily beaten Charles's lap because he's got more temperature in his tyres, the track is more rubbered in, but it wasn't to be, was it?
No. So we had the very exciting Q1, and then when we got round to Q3, Charles did set the fastest lap, but then while himself and quite a few other drivers were all trying to up the game a bit, he did crash towards the end of the lap and bring out the red flags and brought an end to the session, which quite a lot of drivers weren't too happy about. People like Max Verstappen and Carlos Sainz both thought that they could have set much quicker times that time. And there were a few questionable ideas on Twitter that he'd done it on purpose, but as the events of the weekend proved, there's no way you were going to crash your car on purpose. That would just be stupid.
Yeah, and I think we've seen what Michael Schumacher has done to keep pole at Monaco before by like parking his car at Rascasse, where he kind of the slowest point, not just on that track, but like in all of Formula 1. He crashed it there and got minimal damage to like his nose. If you do that, I think you lose your pole. That's what Michael Schumacher, he lost his pole that weekend. So why would you do that if you were on pole at the moment?
But the other kind of shocks of qualifying for Formula 1 was Lewis Hamilton's performance. So he ended up qualifying in 7th, which was considerably lower than we're used to seeing the reigning world champion. And then we also saw Daniel Ricciardo in the McLaren dropping out in Q2 when he found himself 12th on the grid. So there was a few little upsets up and down the order, which was quite unpredictable, and I don't think going into it we would have thought, oh, Lewis, yeah, he's going to qualify 7th. But then the other event that we wanted to talk about was Formula E's qualifying.
the thing with Formula E qualifying is I like the idea, and we had a good conversation about qualifying in the last episode. But I do feel it's a little bit convoluted. Although for an event like Monaco, that makes sense because you do avoid the kind of traffic paradise that you would get at Monaco.
Yeah, that is my favourite thing about Formula E qualifying, is how there's only ever a few cars on track at a time, and everyone's got the space to do their running. But then it makes it a little bit unpredictable with like track evolution and things, and how the different groups will fare on the circuit. It's always quite a competitive field, but the gap between the top four in Monaco was just 600th of a second. So they were all super close together in that super pole, which is something we're quite used to in Formula E. But I don't know how the closeness of it in Monaco compares to other events. It seemed like there was just nothing in it between the top three in the end were Robin Freins, Mitch Evans and Antonio Felix da Costa. It felt like at one point any one of them could have been on pole.
And that's good considering that it was their first run around this circuit and probably one of the longest circuits that they've got on their calendar. And also, I guess, one of the slowest to still be so close together where you could lose time very quickly.
Yeah, I have the pole times for both series actually, and Antonio Felix da Costa got pole with a 1 minute 31.317. So that was in the Formula E, and then Charles Leclerc's pole time in Formula 1 was 1 minute 10.346. So wow. I know Formula E is slower, but when you see it written down like that, 20 seconds a lap, it seems like ages. But then, how much does that matter if then the racing is so close and so competitive? Like which bit do you need to focus on?
Well, that's what we're coming on to, isn't it? I guess when we come into racing action. I guess if you were there in Monaco watching the qualifying, and you had the choice of being there on Formula 1 weekend, the Saturday on Formula 1 or the qualifying session for Formula E, you probably would... What would you pick if you could only be at one?
I think, as much as both were really exciting to watch from home, if I had to be there for just one, I probably would pick to be there for the Formula 1 qualifying, because it's always the most exciting part of the weekend, qualifying at Monaco, and I think this year's was probably one of the closest and most competitive we've seen for a little while, just because you had Ferrari, Red Bull, McLaren and Valtteri Bottas at times all leading the lap chart and all setting the quickest times, and that was quite a nice shock that not many people would have predicted ahead of the weekend. So I think of the two, I would go for qualifying in Formula 1. What about you?
Yeah, I would agree. I think the qualifying session at Monaco isn't just one of the best sessions of the weekend, it's one of the best sessions of the year. It is kind of prime Formula 1. The importance of it is hugely significant compared to the other qualifying sessions of the year. And yeah, I think, again, leading on to the next point, a lot of the work is done on a Saturday in Formula 1 where it's not necessarily done in Formula E.
No.
So I think that sounds like 1 point to Formula 1.
And so after you've had all the excitement and fanfare of qualifying on the Saturday, that then brings you on to race day on the Sunday. And Formula 1 at Monaco can sometimes end up being a bit of a procession. And I think the only overtakes of note I wrote down in the full 78 laps, was it, or 68 laps, was Mick Schumacher sneaking past Nikita Mazepin in the first lap, and then the one where Seb came out the pits and had Pierre Gasly in the AlphaTauri, which we didn't even see. So for a full race distance, to have just two on-track overtakes like that does make it seem a little bit parade-like. But what did you think of the race? How do you think it compared to other years?
It was interesting because of the kind of the pit strategies. That move from Seb on Pierre was godlike. But was that again only possible because he was coming in through the pit lane? Why don't we see that lap through lap? Lewis couldn't get himself in that position on Pierre when he was kind of in race mode. So was it only because it was a really good overcut from Seb that he put himself in that position?
Yeah, I feel like that must have had an impact because Lewis seemed to be stuck behind Pierre just lap after lap after lap and was like, there's no way I can get past.
Yeah.
But it was quite interesting to see how much strategy played a part, especially with someone like Perez in the Red Bull.
Yeah.
And he pulled out a much longer stint, which the engineers came over and said to him that it meant he'd managed to get the jump on quite a few different people. So people like Pierre, people like Pierre and Seb, he'd worked his way past it up into fourth. So I always quite like it when strategy plays a big role like that. It's just nice when there's a bit of a mix of strategy and on track.
Yeah, I don't like to be boring and talk about tyres, but I think Perez's tyre management is really coming to like the forefront as one of his strengths this season, as he becomes that team player with Max. He did, 55 laps in like a 62 lap race in Portugal on the same set of tyres. But there are things
it's amazing how he can use that strength to, if he's had a slightly mixed qualifying session.
Yeah,
he's going to end up a few places up the order just because of his tyre management. And
they're things that are exciting when you see a graphic on screen. They're not exciting if you were. It's not going to make the highlights reel, is it?
No.
To be honest, I've not watched the highlights reel of the Formula 1 race this week. I don't know how they've managed to get 7 minutes out of that race.
One tyre-related issue that definitely would make it into the highlights reel was Valtteri Bottas's cursed pit stop, which was probably the biggest talking point of the weekend, I would have thought.
Yeah.
Well, that and the result.
Well, some say that tyre is still on that car.
Yeah, there was a few stories saying that they had to ship it back to the factory with the tyre still on because the it's not the thread, is it? But
it was cross thread.
Was it the thread that had broken?
Yeah, it had kind of gone on an angle, so it had kind of ripped off all of the thread part to it, so there was nothing for the gun to attach to and bring the nut back off from.
Mm-hmm.
That's my very technical analysis.
But it explained what happened. There was nothing to attach the gun to.
Yeah, there was a really cool shot of them putting the gun on, and then you could see all the aluminium kind of fly where it's trying to grab onto something and just can't. I thought that was good.
Yeah. So if most of the action in F1 was down to the pits and the strategy, Formula E has no pit stops really. So all of the action was on track, which is, I think, my favourite thing about it.
Part of it, obviously, the cars are not as wide as the F1 cars, are they? So it is a lot easier to pass.
But you wouldn't have expected them to be going 3 wide.
No. And that, harking back to what we were saying about Vettel's pass on Gasly in the Grand Prix, was it Mitch Evans on Felix da Costa at Beau Rivage? It was the same move, but that was in racing trim, and my God, it was unbelievable.
Yeah. I think, was he just coming out the end of attack mode? He'd got a few little bits of energy left, and he still just shot up.
Yeah.
Shot up Beau Rivage to take the place.
It's such a tricky place to get past as well, because you're on the outside of this relatively like medium speed corner, but you're also on the crest of that hill, so it's completely blind. Oh, what a move.
Yeah, it was great. And then we had quite a few dives into the new chicane, which, what did you think about the layout of the chicane there?
I can't remember why they did it a little bit differently.
No, I don't know the reason behind it. It just seemed to make it quite a lot sharper.
But yeah, that was where Felix da Costa made that incredible penultimate lap move back on Mitch Evans, wasn't it?
Yeah. And then in the final stages, we had the safety car So then we had the safety car restart, and everyone had lost a bit of energy, and a few people had managed to manage their energy usage a bit better, so had a bit more towards the end, which was what helped Mitch Evans out, I think, wasn't it?
So Mitch ran out of energy on the last lap. And
Oh, yes.
And was overtaken. They went 3 wide over the line, and he managed to hold on to third. He cut the chicane at the end because of all the craziness that was happening around him. And there was a charge from someone behind him as well. But, God, it was an exciting finish.
Yeah. And then there was the thing with John-Eric Verne, how he went to take his attack mode just before the safety car. It didn't quite work. So then they were saying, is he going to have to go back in for it again in like the final few laps? There was just so much action packed into that 45 minutes plus a lap.
Yeah.
Which is just not something you see at Monaco.
And I think one of the great things about the format of Formula E, I think it worked at Monaco having things like attack mode. Because attack mode takes you off the racing line twice a race, you know that there's going to be action, and getting that pole doesn't guarantee that you're going to be at the front of the pack the entire time.
No, exactly, because like most times when people took attack mode, they were losing at least one place, probably 2.
Yeah.
So then they were having to fight their way back through, knowing that other people would still have to take attack mode. And I know it's a little bit of a gimmick, but I do really like that element of unpredictability that it adds to the race. Fan boost, I'm not like, it's a thing, it's there, I'm fine with it. But I prefer the impact that attack mode has on the racing action. So we both saying that is a point for Formula E on raceability.
The fact that we didn't have to talk about pit stops and undercuts and overcuts and strategy, and it was all on track, yeah, I think it takes the win.
And then the final point we wanted to discuss was like the overall entertainment of the, are we saying of like the whole weekend and the whole racing spectacle?
I think so. It's going to be how, if we were in attendance, I guess, which one would we have preferred more?
I found this a lot trickier to kind of evaluate because with qualifying and race, you obviously know that they're both exciting, and well, with the race, you know that the Formula E was considerably more exciting. But when it comes to like which event you'd like to go to, there's all that kind of gravitas around the Formula One Grand Prix in Monaco that seems quite appealing, and like the idea of being there for Monaco because it's kind of the flagship race, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I'd agree. The atmosphere on Saturday for qualifying must be absolutely insane. I quite like seeing that some of the Max Verstappen's Orange Army are now appearing on yachts rather than in the grandstands. I quite like that. And while Sunday isn't, if we're talking about 2021 specifically, you know, they're not always the best races. There was a lot of drama before the race with Charles Leclerc and him losing, and that was properly sad as well. I think part of the appeal to racing in Monaco must be being in another part of Monaco and just hearing the cars like reverberate around this like peaceful town, this peaceful coastal town essentially, and the biggest sporting event in the world at that time happening right there. Whereas with Formula E, I know we said earlier like we don't care that they don't make much noise, but it does bring part of the atmosphere, doesn't it?
We're used to seeing Formula One cars and race cars at Monaco. It's something that happens every year. But the thing I really like about Formula E is that they have a race in downtown Brooklyn, and it just seems mad that they close off streets in Brooklyn and have race cars driving around. And then they had one in the middle of Rome the other week. When do you see race cars in Rome?
Yeah.
I like that novelty of putting these electric cars somewhere where they kind of shouldn't be. So while it's very nice seeing them at Monaco, they already fit there. They like look at home. Whereas the races I want to go to are like the Brooklyn one, the Santiago one, in these really busy cities where racing shouldn't happen. So it's cool seeing them at Monaco, and it was a great spectacle. But if I was to pick a Formula E race to go to, like a dream event, I don't think Monaco would be the top one. Whereas if I was to pick a dream Formula One event to go to, I mean, it'd be Singapore, but Monaco would also be near the top.
Yeah, it'll be. So in terms of entertainment, who are you giving the point to?
I think in terms of the whole spectacle of the weekend, it's probably going to go to Formula One, just because it is that whole glitz glam flagship event. But that isn't to detract from how great Formula E was. It just didn't seem like elevated over another Formula E race.
Yeah.
Whereas it seems like a bigger deal than most Formula One races. That's my thinking with this one. What about you?
Yeah, I would agree. It felt special, didn't it, being back at Formula One, and a lot of the coverage. It was nice seeing it a little bit more buzzy, and it felt like a race again. And I don't think that's going to happen when we go to circuits again. It's going to feel very sanitised and COVID safe again.
Yeah.
But it did feel a little bit, magic, I guess.
Yeah. And I guess having last year off sort of not helped, but kind of resulted in that a bit, because we'd kind of forgotten what it's like seeing cars around Monaco. But so that was kind of our thoughts on both the Monaco Grand Prix and the Monaco E-Prix.
So thank you for joining us as we compared the Formula E E-Prix, the Formula E E-Prix, the Monaco E-Prix, and the Formula One Grand Prix. Let us know your thoughts on Formula E versus Formula One. This is one of the first times that we can directly compare them. So go into the comments and murder each other with your opinions. While you're there, like this video, give it a subscribe, and then in the description you'll find a link over to our podcast where you can listen to the full audio version. You can get that wherever you get our podcasts. Be sure to subscribe, and you can also find our Twitter, which has the exemplary racing commentary throughout the week. Owen's starting to live tweet with some of the races again, so you don't want to miss that. And you'll also find the code to join our fantasy team, where you can watch Yuki Tsunoda slowly murdering my hopes and dreams. But in the meantime, next week we will be previewing the Azerbaijan Grand Prix at Baku, so be sure to check back here on Friday. In the meantime, have a good week. See you later.